Hi, my name's Steve Holt, editor of TKC Mag and TotalKitCar.com. Welcome to another episode of the Total Kit Car History File series. And indeed, welcome along to the Total Kit Car YouTube channel. That's a lot of Total Kit Cars there, and I do apologise, but as I said before, that's who I am, that's what we are, that's what we do. So, moving straight into this one, I want to keep it, I don't want to bore anybody, and I want to keep this nice and concise, and it's a story of a really good mid-80s kit car company. Actually lasted until, in one form or another, right through to about 2016, but in their original incarnation, they lasted for about 12 years. But let's talk about this. The company concerned is Southern Roadcraft. They were another one of the West Sussex brigade of kit car companies that included Dutton, Eagle, you name it, Jago. West Sussex was a very prolific area for kit car companies, large and small, but there was a lot of bigger companies there. Of course, Pilgrim is another one, or was another one in those days when they were doing really big volumes. Not sure why that would be. West in the East Midlands and areas of engineering, you can understand. I've always been able to sort of think, well, yeah, there's a reason for that area being full of kit car enthusiasm because of the trades that were around there. West Sussex, boat building area, I suppose, marine, GRP, and of course you got Goodwood in West Sussex, of course, as well, which is obviously a motorsport interest. But anyway, moving on. Southern Roadcraft, founded in 1985 by two brothers, Brian and Ian Nichols. They were based in the Brighton area, well, Port Slade. Well, I think they were Brighton first of all. They moved on off to Port Slade, I think, after a year or so. And they were one of the mid-80s, the proliferation of Cobras that sprung up. And they were one of the early ones of the sort of later era with Dax or DJ Sports Cars, Ram, who of course that was Adrian Cocking, who was an ex-DJ Sports Cars employee, and Unique Autocraft, also in Harlow, which is where DJ Sports Cars were. I think there was a little bit of bartering system going on. Southern Roadcraft had at their disposal a real character, a Kiwi called Pat Hansen, larger than life character, who was a really good engineer and a superb welder. And I think there was talk, and I don't know if it ever transpired in reality, there was talk that DJ Sports Cars would supply Southern Roadcraft with a body in return for a Pat Hansen chassis, but I don't think that ever materialised. But they were certainly one of those early sort of very, very popular Cobra replica manufacturers, good ones. Usual fare, V8 engines, usually of a Chevy variety. And it was a very good car, really good car. The photos here show their early replica, which are, sorry, their early demonstrator. That car, sadly we haven't got any colour pictures of that, but it was a white car with a blue stripe through it. I have to tell a story about that one. When I worked for Kit Cars and Specials, around about 1986 this was, I went down to meet Brian and Ian, and that's when they were definitely in Port Slade. And I turned up at the appointed time, and this was literally, they were on the main road, the sea road really, so across the road from their workshop was the beach. And I remember turning up and the doors were locked, and I thought, well, that's strange. I think I've got the right time. I've certainly got the right day. And then all of a sudden, it was like a scene from one of those 80s Men from Atlantis or something. As these two strapping lads came marching across from the beach with their surfboards under their arm, and they'd been for lunchtime surf, as you do. Anyway, that was the day that I took that car back to Croydon, which is where Link House were based, Kit Cars and Specials magazine, and had a great time in that car, and it really was a beautiful thing. There's some really strange things happened that day, or those 3 days at that car. One, my sister, I took her for a ride in it, and she burnt through her jeans with the side pipe exhaust. Just as I told her, watch that side pipe exhaust, they burn. And she's still got the scar on her leg, which it burnt through the seam on her jeans, so she's never forgiven me for that, really. Then I was I think I was driving through Coulsdon, and there was serious traffic by Coulsdon South Station, if you know it, which is the road that leads off of the M23 and heads off towards Croydon on the A23. And I looked to my right as someone shouted to me, and this will sound really bizarre, but it was the Olympic swimmer Duncan Goodhue who shouted at me and said, "Nice car, mate," which I thought was really bizarre. But then the funniest thing of all, when I got back to Croydon, I think our office is up on the third floor, and I went up to the office, part the Cobra in the car park, and as I got a bit older, I wouldn't have gone back to the office. I would have gone swanning off in that car all afternoon and gone in next morning. But I was a good lad then. So I went back to the office, and then within about 10 minutes, the security man down on the ground floor in the car, just as he came in from the car park, he said, "Steve, there's a policeman down here to see you." And I thought, "Oh my gosh." He said, "That Cobra, you're with that? That Cobra's yours." I said, "Well, it's not mine, but I'm responsible for it." "Yeah, why?" He said he wants to talk to you about it. And I thought, "Oh no." And honestly, Gov, I hadn't been doing more than 30 miles an hour through the middle of Croydon in that car. Definitely not. Anyway, cut a long story short, I went down there, trepidation, a bit sheepish, nervously. I could see him as I came out of the lift, and he had a big smile on his face. And I thought, well, that's really good. And so I said, can I help you?" And he said, "Is that your Cobra?" And I said, "Well, it's not my Cobra, really, unfortunately, but I'm responsible for it. How can I help you, Ossifer?" And he said, he said, "Cobras are it's my dream car." He said, "I'll finish work in an hour." He said, if I come back, would you be able to give me a blast round Croydon in it?" I said, "Well, I can't give you a blast because you're a policeman." He said, "Well, I am the police, so you can give me a blast round Croydon." So I didn't go above 30 miles an hour again, obviously. No, seriously. It was just one of those bizarre moments that sometimes happen in your life. And there's several that of the kit car industry has done that to me over the years. And I'm not complaining because most of them have been quite funny in hindsight. And that was one that I've never forgotten. That's one of my stories, really. And so you can have that one. But that just happened to be with that Southern Roadcraft. And anyway, I don't know what happened to the policeman. He loved it. He went off. He went off really happy. Um, I do remember. I do remember 2 days later because we had it, I think, for 3 or 4 days, and I was taking it back. And funny enough, somewhere by Croydon Police Station on a big roundabout. I don't even know Croydon, but there's a big roundabout by the police station going on to the Croydon bypass. Yeah, bypass, not a bypass, flyover. There's nothing flyover about that road anymore. But anyway, um, and the police car went by tooting and flashing his headlights, and it was him, which was really funny. But there you go. Anyway, really good car. They probably made, I would think, about 200 of those SRV8s, and along with the Ram SC, they've lasted. They haven't been in production properly for a long time. And the other day I happened to see. I was at a classic car show of all things, late last autumn, in West Sussex, funnily enough, which probably is one of the cars they sold in the local area back in the day. And this Southern Roadcraft, this RV8, was about, well, the guy said was 38 years old, but it was still in great condition. So they were a good kit. Um, the other car that Southern Roadcraft made was an SDS RV12. Now that came along in 1987. At that time, Miami Vice TV program was all the rage, and I can't remember which one of those stars. I don't know. No, wasn't Don Johnson had a Daytona replica. Well, they made out it was a real one, but it was made by McBurney Coachworks in the States, and they sold a lot of those cars. Southern Roadcraft initially wanted to act as agent for McBurney in the UK, so they imported one, built it. The trouble is that as Brian reminded me just the other day, it was more of a body kit for a Corvette C3, I think it was, chassis. And Corvette C3s aren't exactly growing on trees in the UK, even then, of course, and certainly were even then collectible. So that was never really going to work. And they dimensionally, Brian said it wasn't quite right. So they set about devising their own one, which was correctly proportioned. And they went to town on that because they tooled up for their own wheels. They had some really nice touches on that car. Based it XJ6 or XJ12 preferably because they wanted the 12-cylinder engine for that. Although obviously V8s would do. Contrary to belief, it wasn't a revised SRV8 chassis. Even I thought that until recently, actually, so I was wrong. It was a bespoke chassis. It was a completely different chassis to their SRV8. And they probably, because let's not forget, there were several companies of that time doing those. It was a bit like the Countach or when the Cobra appeared. When the Daytona replica was all the rage, several companies in the UK got cracking with a replica. Robin Hood, Arrow, the aforementioned Mr. Cocking, and of course Southern Roadcraft. They probably did about 100, 120 of those. And both of those products from Southern Roadcraft were excellent. So by the time 1997 came along, I think that the brothers had kind of run their course with the kit car industry, or producing kit cars anyway. Ian had, I think, been involved in the film industry, production sort of side of things for many years, or for years before that, and I think he went back to doing that, amongst other things he was involved with at other businesses. Meanwhile, Brian is still involved. He I think they were originally called Repower, but he's now trading as Roadcraft down in Shoreham by Sea, not far from Brighton. And for many, many years, I wouldn't like to think how many V8 engines and transmissions, Tremex and such like, that Brian has supplied to the kit car industry and kit car builders, building V8 powered cars. And indeed he still is. So good company, Roadcraft. So anyway, but that was 1997 that the original Southern Roadcraft really sort of ceased. Of course, Pilgrim had got their body shell. They were making the bodies for Southern Roadcraft. Their fiberglass was very good, and I think they did a deal with Brian and Ian, which led to the Sumo. Although Pilgrim made a lot of difference. It's totally different in terms of the underpinnings of those two cars. 1997, or 1997, a guy called Jeff Mills, I think he was one of their employees. He was running a company called Direct Specialist Supplies. He traded for a while. I think he was working with a guy called, can't remember the guy's name, Jay. That will come to me in a minute, actually. Jay Leonard, there you go. And I'm not sure if they probably supplied several Cobra replicas, but I'm not sure. I think they offered the SRV12 or the Daytona replica. I'm not sure if they did any of those. And so they both the products, sort of Roadcraft or Southern Roadcraft itself, sort of backburnered, went missing for a couple of years until 2001, when a really nice chap, well, really nice father and son team, Dave and his son Mike Carruthers, who've been running, Dave's been running Pagham service station, not far from Goodwood, funnily enough, in Chichester, since 1964, I believe. Or the garage has been running since then. I think Dave has been their man and boy. And they created a company called Madrick Cars in 2001. Originally, they did a Lotus 7 inspired car, a large scale one. Drove really well, and I remember that Rob Budd, Ginger Budd of Eagle Cars was a friend of Dave, and he was acting as a consultant in those days. But then the moulds for the Southern Roadcraft V8, it didn't touch the SRV12, only the Cobra. And Madrick, of course, named after a famous corner at Goodwood. And Dave and Mike did really well with that car. They made some nice changes, bearing in mind it was 16, 17 years old by that time when they acquired it, in terms of the package. Did some nice upgrades, and they built some beautiful examples of the Southern Roadcraft V8 SRV8. And their show cars were always had a nice demo on the go. And there's several that I remember vividly. There was a beautiful metallic blue one they built, which was on a par with anything else around. And then so that was that really. They carried on until about the mid-teens, I believe, and then they just went back to doing their day job. they'd had a good go. I've got no idea how many. I've got to be honest. If Dave is listening to this or he's made aware of this video, hi Dave. I hope you're well, mate. Long time no speak. And we thought you was one of the good guys, mate. You did a really good job. That's not meaning to be patronising whatsoever. You did a good job. And I don't know. You'll correct me. Undoubtedly, 50 maybe kits, maybe more. If it's more than that, Dave, I apologise, mate. But no, they had a really good go. So the Southern Roadcraft as a brand is one of the really good brands. It's a shame it's not around nowadays, really. But built some lovely cars. I remember driving a couple of Dave's Cobras, and they were very nicely built. They were on a par with the Ian and Brian were very good engineers, really good engineers. And they did a great job. And that's why those kits that they built have stood the test of time and are still out and around me, much like Adrian's Ram SC Cobras. I still see some vintage ones of those that still look $1 million, clearly well built by the original customer, but the quality of the kit itself, I said earlier, has stood the test of time, and so it was with the SRV8. Anyway, short but sweet. Kept that one down to about 15 minutes. I hope you enjoyed it. Make sure you come back if you haven't checked out the rest of our videos. I think this one could be number 100. Hey, well done us. In our little plethora of videos. Do check them out if you haven't seen. You haven't already. There's lots to look at there or listen to. Of course, I'm a dinosaur when it comes to this sort of stuff, so I always, until very recently, assumed that every video I recorded would appear in in chronological order. So I think in the early ones I was saying, oh, if you heard last week's video, make sure you tune in next week. And of course it didn't work like that. It doesn't work like that in Tinternet. So regardless of when I recorded this, I always like to time date these really, or timestamp these. I'm recording this on the 19th of February 2025. So it might well be out of sequence of anything else. It probably will be. But thank you for giving up a good chunk of your day to spend time on our little channel. If you haven't already subscribed, please do so, because it makes a world of difference to us. So if you could, that would be great. Click that or hit that thumbs up button as well, if you'd be so kind, and I'd be a happy bunny. Yeah, so wherever you are in the world, I hope you're having a great day. I won't be jealous if you're sitting on a sandy beach with a palm tree and a beer. Not necessarily in that order, but you know what I mean. And I look forward to welcoming you here again next time. Steve Holt, over and out.